Welcome here to the Kingsmen Corner. Griffin Leonard alongside Coach Joe Hudak. We will hear from assistant pitching coach Nick Osborne later on in the show. But welcome back here. We're fresh off the trip from Atlanta, East Cobb, Georgia, for the ABA kickoff. Coach, I'd say it was a pretty successful one.
Yeah, I thought it was a great time. It's a when I heard they were going to do the kickoff week, I thought that would be really a cool event. To have all 13 academies there, and playing 3 games in 3 days, and so yeah, it was everything that I had hoped it would be. Obviously, anytime you do that first time, there's a few little kinks they got to work out a little bit, but I thought all in all it was a great experience. And we got rained out the last day. That was probably the only negative, but really, really pleased with the event.
Of course, yeah, between the two teams, even despite the rain, still got in five of the six scheduled games
Yep.
with the varsity grabbing that Wednesday doubleheader. So, we made it work, and both teams had a lot to be excited about. The prospect team, of course, against Wellington Sports Academy this last week, won both of its
Yeah.
two of the three games that they were supposed to play.
Yeah, we got rained out that last day, so coming away 2-0, that's obviously a good thing for us. And was interested, coming to what caliber, what was the level of competition going to be, at all the levels. Obviously, there were 3 levels that were there. The premier teams were all there, all the prospect teams were there, and then the varsity teams from the North Division were all there. All 4 of them were there. So. And I thought all in all it was pretty good competition. I thought Wellington was a good club. They were well coached. I thought we played extremely well in pretty much all phases of the game. So, really pleased with how we played.
Of course, the ABA split up into the North and the South division. Wellington out of the South. Not very often will the Kingsmen play one of those Southern teams this season. How good of an opportunity was that for your guys to see some Southern competition, some guys that you won't see throughout the rest of the regular season?
Yeah, this will actually be the only Southern team that will play until we get to the playoffs at the very end of the season. So I thought it was good. The Florida teams are all pretty good. They all have obviously great weather, a lot of great players down in Florida, a lot of guys to pick from, and so I thought they were good. I noticed some of the other competitions. The teams playing at the prospect level. It seemed to be there's some really really good competition there as well. A couple of teams stood out. TNXL has a really good club, obviously, and then Georgia Premier, their prospect team was pretty good as well. So I think the 3 of us were the teams that were 2-0. So yeah, we'll see how it goes from here on out.
Yeah, sounds good. On the prospect side of things, a couple of big wins, couple of close wins, but within that, within those team victories were more than a few really solid individual performances. Just wondering who you thought really stood out this week in East Cobb.
Well, I think offensively, it's hard to not talk about uh, Jack Curtis. I mean, I tell the guys, if I was a pitcher, which I was in college, and I was pitching against Jack, I would not know how to get him out. He just drives the ball in both gaps. Generally, if there's a guy that's a dead pull guy, if I can locate, I can get him out. But you get a guy that can drive the ball in the left center field gap. He hit a home run in his first at bat, the first game in left center field, and then hit 2 lasers the second game in right center field. That's just a guy it's hard to get out. So hard to get past him. He had obviously a great series. But I thought up and down the lineup we swung it pretty well. I thought Montgomery Hart had a really good series. Both for the prospect and for the varsity, and I thought he swung it well. Owen Beatrice has been swinging it really well for us, but. I think up and down the lineup, I thought Israel Clase had a really good second game, hit some really balls really hard. So, I think that's the thing about us offensively for the prospect team. I think up and down the lineup, we're really solid. There's just no you can't look at that and say, man, if I can get through the top 6 hitters, I'm going to be okay. That's just not the case. Mason Ritzma had a good series as well. He's our number 7 hitter, I think, and we just swung the bats well.
And then on the pitching side, what did you think of the guys?
I thought Noah Entrican threw well. He's thrown well for us all year. I think they got 3 runs off of him, but I think all 3 were unearned. We a couple of balls that difficult plays that we could have made, but we didn't make. But I thought he threw well. I thought again Micah Irving threw well, gave up 1 run in 4 innings, 4+ innings. Really, really cool to see that. Brandon Falk threw well in relief. I'll tell you one guy that threw really well for us again was Tristan Harless. He come in the first game and, when the game got tight and, threw really well. I think threw 2 1/3 shutout innings, I think. So, really pleased with that. So I thought, by and large, we threw the ball pretty well. We played pretty good defense all along. We swung the bats well. I think when that happens, obviously you come out of there with 2 wins and, 5-3 and 6-4, both close ball games. I thought one of the things that I was really excited about, the second game we were up 4-0, and then they get 3 runs in the sixth inning to tie at 4-4. They had gotten a run earlier, and I think two infield swing and bunt dribblers that got their runs, so it tied the ball game 4-4 in the top of the sixth. We came right back and had a great inning. Scored 2 runs in the bottom of the sixth. That's a mark of a good club, I think. When you have a lead and you give it up, you come right back and. I think that was one of the things, when we beat P27's premier team. Every time they scored, we scored. And I was really happy about that.
Course. So 2-0 for the prospect this week. The varsity team went 1-2, winning against Georgia Premier, dropping a couple really close ball games to P27 and to ECA. I know, Coach, because of the time constraints with trying to get coaches for both games, of course, you only saw so much of the varsity. But just wondering your thoughts from the action that you did see from the Kingsmen's younger group.
Yeah, I saw the first 2 games, most of the whole game, and then obviously their third game was when we were playing our second game at the same time. And that's one of the things we did. We knew the rain was coming on Thursday, and I talked to Adam Pate from ECA, and we decided to try to move the varsity game up to Tuesday so we could get it in. Unfortunately, it was right at the same time as our prospect team was playing, but yeah, I look at it, we were 1-2, but I mean we were literally probably 2 outs from being 3-0. We lost a tough 4-3 game to P27. Tie ball game. We were tying the game in the last inning. The umpires called it an interference call on our slide, which probably was the correct call. But that was just one little play there and we gave them a couple runs early. And then the last game against ECA, we had a 10-6 lead. And we walked guys. In the last 2 innings, I think they scored 5 runs, and all 5 of the guys that scored got on base because of walks. So really pleased with how the varsity team played. We cleaned up few little things. I think we're going to be very good there as well. So all in all, Griff, really pleased with how we played this week.
Of course, now I know everybody's jostling for at bats, time on the mound, et cetera, et cetera. For some of those varsity guys that are looking to become floaters, or maybe floaters that are looking to get the bump up full time, what are you and Oz and Preston looking for as a coaching staff for guys wanting to get bumped up as this season goes on?
Yeah, I think it's production. It's performing, especially whenever the game's on the line. There's a lot of guys that they can say, hey, I was 2 for 4 today, but, the 2 hits they got were with nobody on base and they were kind of flares. And, they came up with 2 other times and with men in base and they struck out both times. So you say, hey, we're 2 for 4, but it wasn't a good day offensively for them, right? So, looking for performance primarily. And, we've got some time now. So, the first rosters are in. So we're set where we are right now until March 30th. So we have the whole month of March to evaluate, and by then I think probably there will be some movement. There'll be some guys that maybe are on the varsity team that aren't even a floater that may have a chance to move up, and there may be some guys on the prospect team that don't do the job and may move down to be a floater. So that's one of the things I really liked about the ABA when we first started investigating joining it. I think the floater idea is a really good idea and they give you time, to see, okay, yeah, initially it looks like these are the guys that should float, but now a month later, man, that can look a whole different way. And then right before the playoffs on May 5th, we have our third roster decisions, and so we can change them then as well. So, I really like that. If players do well and they earn, a chance to move up, then they'll get it. And if other players, don't do well and maybe they're, moved down to the varsity team. That's life right now. These guys, for the most part, with our guys, every player on our team, both teams, the prospect and the varsity, pretty much were the guy in high school, right? They were the guy. Well, now everybody's the, now nobody's the guy. Everybody's good, right? So now you come in and you say, oh my gosh, I knew in high school I was the guy. Well, now we got 30 guys, right? And so that's really cool because I think that's one of the things that makes you better as a player. The competition that you play against, but also the competition that you play with. And so, but let me say this, I'm just so happy with my guys. On the field we played great, but off the field I'm really proud of them in the hotel and in the bus and in the restaurants. We were getting ready to leave Thursday morning, and I had a lady come up to me from another team, mother from one of the other players. She said, "I just want to tell you uh, how nice your young men are.
That's cool.
How they were really polite. They said yes, ma'am, no, ma'am." Yes, sir, no, sir. And they were just really pleasant to talk to. And I told the guys afterwards, that really made my day, because we do aspire to be a really good baseball team. We aspire to be great baseball players, but we also aspire to be great young men as well. And so that really made my day. I was really proud of them for that.
Yeah, that's really, really cool to hear. You brought up something really interesting early on in that answer, then alluded to it later, the importance of mental strength when you're on a team like this in game situations and off the field too, when you're competing and trying to get better. What steps have you taken to try to teach that mental strength in some of these guys? Obviously, they're young, they're still developing that, but it's a hard thing to teach, isn't it?
It is. It is. In fact, I'm not sure you can teach it. I mean, you can talk about it. Uh, Baseball in particular is a game of failure, offensively especially, and it's really hard. You can have one bad game, and go 0 for 4, and you just feel horrible about yourself. But you have to understand that every great hitter, Shohei Ohtani, he goes 0 for 4 sometimes, right? And Bryce Harper, he goes 0 for 4 sometimes with 3 strikeouts. That's the game. The game tells you that you're going to fail. And so the guys that can handle the failure, those are the guys that are really good players. Doesn't mean you have to like it. None of us like it, but you have to accept it. You have to handle it, and you got to say, okay, I had a bad at bat, that at bat. That doesn't have anything to do with my next at bat, unless I let it, unless I live in my head. If I live in my head, then I'm going to be in trouble. And so, and that's when we got some young guys that are struggling with that right now. We talked at our chapel today, about how uh, don't be so result oriented. You know, do the best you can. God expects us to do the best we can. He doesn't expect us to be perfect, right? And we can have peace knowing that, hey, I did the best I could. I just didn't get it done today. I did my best. I prepared. I was ready. I did the best I can, and I pitched, and I got knocked out in the first inning. I mean, that happens. I mean, that's a game, right? And so, and that's a hard thing for young guys, especially, to understand and to be able to handle. And so we do talk about that quite a bit, that it's just a game of failure, and you can't let one bad at bat turn into 2 bad at bats, and then pretty soon it turns into 4 bad at bats, and now you're 0 for 20 because you're in your head. Tough thing. It's a tough thing.
It really is. Before we wrap up here, I wanted to move on to next week.
Yeah.
Big prospect series coming up here against PDG at Gardner Webb University. That'll be a good 3 game set for the prospect guys. And then the varsity team back on the road down to Georgia for a series of Georgia Premier. What excites you about those matchups?
Yeah, it's going to be a really busy week for us. PDG, really good club. That's Canes Baseball's Academy. And so they have a lot of good players. It's going to be good to play them. Again, just every game, see how you match up, right? So it's going to be a busy week. So we've got, we're going to practice Monday. We have a doubleheader Prospect Tuesday, and then Prospect has a single game Wednesday at 11. All right. When that game's over, we go back to the apartments, and the varsity leaves at 4 o'clock to go to Statesboro, Georgia, and we've got doubleheader against Georgia Premier Thursday and a single game Friday. So, especially for the coaches and for the floaters, it's going to be a really, really busy week. And but we're excited about it. This. I mean, this is why we do it, man. I mean, this is why we started practicing back in August, man. And why we work so hard. These guys have worked so hard, right, for this very thing. I mean, playing the game, man. There's nothing like it.
It's definitely going to be exciting. Definitely going to be a whirlwind of a week. But I'm sure next time the two of us sit down here, we'll be able to sit back in the chair a little bit, relax, and reflect on it.
Hopefully talk about some wins. And we got 6 games next week, so we'll see how we do.
Yeah, we better have a few to talk about, Coach.
I hope so.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us as always. Looking forward to chatting with you more next week.
Sounds good, Griff. I appreciate you, man.
All right, we're going to step aside here. We'll be back with assistant pitching coach Nick Osborne. We'll talk with him right after this on the Kingsman Corner. What's up, everybody? Just a quick PSA on the future of Kingsman Baseball Academy live streaming and broadcasting for the spring. As you know, all prospecting and varsity games have been streamed on the Kingsman Baseball YouTube channel. That's going to continue, but the ABA has been partnered with Game Changer for all live stats. And over the next couple of weeks, we're hoping to start simulcasting all of our home games onto both YouTube and Game Changer. That'll allow you to follow along with the game with the live stats, the lineups, and anything you could wish for on the Game Changer platform. We're excited to be able to expand ways for people to enjoy the Kingsman Baseball Academy. Back to the Kingsman Corner. Welcome back here to the Kingsman Corner. New day, new setting. Coach Oz now on the show. For those of you who don't know, Coach Oz and I are roommates, so had to gravitate to another room, try to avoid some audio feedback. But Oz, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Griff?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Season treating you all right so far?
Yeah, it's been good so far. I've had a blast so far.
Yeah, it's good to hear. Let's kind of, I mean, we're going to cover a couple of different things, but let's kind of just talk about just you overall for the spring. Obviously, those watching the broadcast have kind of seen you, running down the line to first base sometimes, and working down at the bullpen. But just maybe a refresher for those less familiar with you, what you've been up to this spring with both teams.
Yeah, for the prospect team, I manage basically the pitching staff. Coach Hudak calls the pitches and makes all the decisions and all that. But I manage the staff. I manage the bullpen. Kind of communicate between pitchers and coach. Making sure everybody's arms are okay. I take care of their arm care routines, their day-to-day stuff. And then the varsity games, I do a little bit more with coaching first base. If both teams play at the same time, then I have to end up calling pitches for the varsity team. If not, Coach Hudak still does that. But yeah, I have a similar role for both teams. Just the only part that really changes is when the varsity team plays, I head down to first base a little more as Preston also scooches over to third.
Yeah, that sounds good. It sounds pretty fun. How do you think the spring has gone so far?
Oh, it's gone great so far. I think we've played very well so far. I think we've had games where we've played better than we have in other games. But yeah, I mean, I think we've gone out and shown that we're a pretty good team, going out and beating P27's premier team. Just a straight up shootout. Maybe for a pitching guy, it might have been a little bit more stressful, but no, that was a great win. Being able to go down to East Cobb, Prospect, being able to go 2-0, and even though we got rained out that last day, and even the varsity team in East Cobb going 1-2 down there, playing some really good competition, and also, the varsity team was 3 or 4 plays away from being 3-0 while we were down there. So you can't be too upset at that. You're not happy that you lost the 2 games, but at the same time, you can't be too upset when you're just a couple plays away from being undefeated. Because quite frankly, at the end of the day, that's just baseball.
Of course, yeah. We'll talk more about East Cobb here in a little bit. Wanted to take a couple steps back and talk about the Dominican because a lot has happened since we last talked to you on this show. Just wondering, the Dominican Republic, that mission trip, and all the experiences that went with it. How did that impact you specifically?
Yeah, that was my third trip now down to the DR. I took my first one. That would have been back in 2024, I believe. The year I actually played for Kingsmen. And this past summer, took one with the college guys, which that's always a blast. But then this year, it was kind of interesting going with those guys, the high school guys this year, and going at the beginning of the season. College guys always go at the end of the year. And, that's always fun, kind of the last thing we do for the summer, being able to go do some missionary work and play ball and just do that and kind of enjoy ourselves. But with these guys, this is our opening day, basically. So when we go down there this year, it was very interesting just to see that this trip kind of bring those guys together to start the year. And now instead of coming back and saying, goodbye to everybody like we do in college, now we actually get to keep going and build off those relationships that we've made and those times we've had in the Dominican. So yeah, it was a blast for me. I had, everywhere we went down there, I'd actually been there before. But it's very cool, one, getting to see people again. Really, especially after a couple of years, you start making some relationships with people down there, and it's cool to see them again. And it's also cool to see these guys for the first time. I think that's always the best part, seeing the guys who it's their first time go down and just, see them getting their eyes open to what those people live like.
Of course, a couple of key differences between this last trip that you just went on versus your times before in the Dominican Republic. Wanted to ask you quickly just about obviously being with the college guys. It's a different age group, different walk of life that those guys are in compared to this team that we took a few weeks ago, or I guess more like a month now. It's flown by so fast. What was the experience like seeing these younger guys develop both spiritually and then physically, seeing everything on the island?
Yeah. I think at first I was a little nervous going with high schoolers down there just because, even though it's not like a 10-year age range, it's still a difference between, these kids are high schoolers and then the college guys are basically grown men going down there. And one, I'm really proud of how those guys handled themselves down there, because being in a whole different country put a lot of trust in those guys, and, they handled themselves very well down there. But it's very cool to see them interact with guys their age down there. With the college guys, those guys we play are normally always younger than them for the most part. And then you get into the village teams and you get, a very wide age range. But for the most part, when we play the academies, they're younger guys playing against us who are the older guys. And this year, it was mostly them all being the same age, maybe some guys from the DR teams being a little bit younger, maybe us having some guys that were a little younger. But I think it's very cool seeing them go up against each other, playing ball and just interacting as them being the same age. And they didn't have a problem. And it's something you find out every year. They didn't have a problem talking to each other or communicating, because quite frankly, when you get on the field, there's a universal language in baseball. You might not speak the same language, but there is a universal language in being able to talk baseball. So it's very cool to see that every year.
Of course. So the Dominican trip in the books, and as you alluded to earlier on, instead of the season being over, we've got a ton to go here in the next couple of months. Super, super exciting. East Cobb kicked it all off this last week, the ABA kickoff. What did you like out of the guys over the 5 games total played between the two teams?
Yeah. One, I really liked how we swung the bats all around. I mean, prospect and varsity. I think we swung the bats great. I think something that we've shown this year, and Coach had actually talked about it after one of our games, is just being relentless. I think our offense is just relentless. I think every time, a team thinks they have us or they put up a big inning on us, we always just find a way to respond every single time. So that was always good to see them keep doing that. Pitching, I thought we pitched pretty good. I think for the most part, across the board, we pitched great. I think we had a couple innings where, especially on the varsity side, we walked some guys. Walks lose ball games. So that's kind of what happened in those 2 games. But, and thinking about all that, and having 2 or 3 innings where you walk a bunch of guys, and across you play 27 or 21 innings in 3 games in varsity, you can't be, again, like I said earlier, you can't be mad at that, because you break it down. All right, we had 2 big innings that cost us ball games. That's what lost us it. Okay, well, how do we play across the other 6 innings? Because then we can build off that. And then going to the prospect side of things, I only got to see the first game they played. I didn't quite get to see the second one, but the first game I was very happy with how Noah pitched. Found himself in a couple of tough jams and pitched out of that. Very happy with the way Tristan Harless came into pitch, Kason Young came into pitch. And then the second game, I actually was able to go back and rewatch it on YouTube. Very happy with the way Micah Irving pitched. Found himself in a big first inning jam and got himself out of it. And then Brandon Falk. Brandon Falk just continues to show up, and when we need him, he just shows up and he gives us strikes. And he had a one inning where he found a couple weak choppers where guys reached on base, but like I said, we have a big thing in our staff where you can just control what you can control, and that's all he did. He just controlled what he controlled and found himself through it.
Absolutely. And it's good that you mentioned it there. A good reminder to those watching at home if you missed any games in East Cobb or just want to go back, watch any games from the Dominican or any point in the season. Of course, all those YouTube broadcasts archived on the Kingsman Baseball YouTube channel. You might have to listen to me for 3 hours, but I guess if you're tuning into this, then you're already used to it. But Coach Oz, before I let you go here, I wanted to ask you about coaching the varsity team with Coach Preston. Obviously, Coach Joe Hudak at the head of the program. You know, he makes a lot of those big calls. He's the one of the game managers when he's in the dugout with you guys. But that second day when varsity ended up playing a doubleheader, Prospect went over to the other field and played Wellington. You and
Mhm.
Coach Preston got the chance to, manage that game yourselves. Just wondering, especially as somebody who didn't get to see it myself, how was that experience?
No, it was great. Preston always does a great job when he's asked to step into head coaching role, and I wish a lot of people knew more people knew his story. It would be even more impressive. But no, the way Preston is when he's asked to step into the head coaching role, especially as being the associate head coach, and one day hopefully taking over Kingsman, I think he does a great job. He takes leadership, he takes ownership, he takes it very seriously, and I think a lot of the guys respect him. I know I respect him a lot. I think a lot of the players respect him. And yeah, he just does a great job. I mean, you can see his dad in him a little bit sometimes, which is really cool. But yeah, he does a great job.
Yeah, I haven't quite seen him get as angry in game though.
Nah,
Haven't seen him get thrown out.
nah. I don't think Preston quite has that in him, but that's a Coach Hudak special. So
Yeah, Preston will get there eventually. I did want to ask, you mentioned a lot about Preston. Wanted to ask about you specifically. How have you seen yourself grow as a coach over the course of, if not just this spring, just the year being with the KBA?
yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've learned to do as a coach is learn from my mistakes, like I did as a player. You know, really when you look at when you're playing and you watch your coaches throughout the game, you really don't see them make too many mistakes, as you would say. It's really all about the play on the field. But as a coach, throughout the game, you may make a mistake or two, whether it's calling pitches or doing maybe not getting somebody up quick enough or this or that. I think it's really just learning from my mistakes and each day just trying to get 1% better. Like all the guys on the field are trying to get 1% better. Just as a coach, trying to get 1% better each day.
For sure, it's good to hear that not only the players on the field, but also everybody top to bottom in the organization is finding ways to grow.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, any last thoughts before we wrap things up? Anything you're looking forward to here as we move through the spring?
Nah, I'm just looking forward to continuing conference play. We got PDG this week for the prospect guys, and then right after the PDG series, me and you will, and Coach Hudak and Coach Preston, the varsity guys, will hop on the bus to go back to Georgia. So I'm excited. I mean, I am. I'm excited for that. It's going to be a long week, but it's going to be a good week for us. And then I think next week we got Ray's Collegiate. Isn't that correct?
I think so. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be a good couple of weeks with good competition for both
Yeah.
levels. East Cobb moved very, very quickly at times. I
Yes.
think those more structured series will be good opportunities to really see how these two teams stack up.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be good for them, and I think the boys are excited to finally open up conference play here at home and really see what they're made of. So yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Coach. I'm sure we'll talk to you more throughout the spring.
Yes, sir. Anytime, Griff.
All right. Well, that will wrap up the Kingsman Corner for this week. Make sure to check out the Kingsman Baseball YouTube channel for all updates and on the website for all updates regarding the schedule, both the home games for the prospect and the varsity on the road to Georgia, as Coach Oz alluded to there. But that'll do it for the Kingsman Corner for Coach Joe Hudak, Coach Nick Osborne. I'm Griffin Leonard saying so long. We'll talk to you soon.